But one warrior broke every rule to save her after a rancher's daughter was taken by the Lakota. Before everything changed, her life followed a quiet and steady rhythm. She was the daughter of a rancher who had spent his whole life working the land. Their ranch sat far from any big towns, surrounded by wide-open plains that seemed to stretch forever. Every morning she woke up before the sun fully rose, listening to the soft sounds of animals and the wind moving through tall grass. Life was not easy, but it was honest, and she had grown strong because of it. She was young, but she already understood responsibility. She helped her father with daily work, carried water, fed animals, and learned how to survive in a land that showed no mercy to the careless. Her hands were often rough from work, yet her heart remained gentle. She had learned kindness from her mother, who had passed away years earlier. Since then, the ranch had felt quieter, and she had become both daughter and support to her father. Her father was a serious man, shaped by years of hard labor and loss. He loved his daughter deeply, though he rarely spoke of it. He believed the world beyond their ranch was dangerous and unpredictable. Stories traveled fast on the plains, stories of conflict, misunderstanding, and fear between different people who shared the land. He warned her often to stay close to home, to never wander too far, and to always be careful. She listened, but like many young people, she also carried curiosity inside her. When she looked across the land, she wondered what existed beyond what she could see. She did not dream of adventure in a reckless way, but she believed the world was larger than fear. Still, she respected her father's rules and understood that survival often depended on caution. On the day everything changed, nothing seemed unusual at first. The sky was clear and the air felt calm. She went about her chores as she always did. Her father was fixing a fence not far from the house, and she planned to bring him water when she finished tending to the animals. I moved slowly, as it often did, marked by this steady pace of work. As the sun climbed higher, the land grew quiet in a way that felt different. The wind slowed, and even the animals seemed uneasy. She noticed it but brushed the feeling aside, telling herself she was imagining things. Life on the plains had taught her not to panic without reason. She picked up the water jug and walked toward the fence line. The grass brushed against her legs, and the open sky made her feel small but free. That was when the calm shattered. Sounds broke the silence, quick, sharp, and unfamiliar. Before she could react, figures appeared where moments before there had been nothing. Fear took hold of her before her mind fully understood what was happening. Everything moved too fast. She tried to run, but the ground felt heavy beneath her feet. Strong hands stopped her, not cruel but firm, allowing no escape. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might burst. She called out for her father, her voice breaking as panic filled her chest. Her father heard her cry and turned just in time to see her being taken away. He shouted and ran, but he was too far, and the moment slipped through his fingers like sand. The distance between them grew in seconds, though it felt like a lifetime. Helplessness settled deep in his chest as he watched his daughter disappear into the vast land. For her, time lost meaning. Fear blurred everything. She expected pain, anger, or harsh treatment because that was what fear had taught her to expect. But instead she was forced to move quickly, guided away from the only life she had ever known. Her thoughts raced. Would she ever see her father again? Would she survive this? As they traveled, she noticed that no one spoke to her. Faces remained serious, focused on the journey. She did not understand their language, but she sensed that this was not chaos. There was order in the way they moved, rules she did not know but could feel. That confused her even more. She had expected wildness, but what she saw was control. The land around her changed slowly as they moved farther away. Familiar sights disappeared, replaced by places she had never seen. Fear stayed with her, but exhaustion soon followed. Her body ached and her mind struggled to keep up with the reality she was facing. Every step felt like it carried her farther from safety. When they finally stopped, she found herself in a place that felt like another world. People watched her with curiosity, caution, and silence. She felt exposed, alone, and deeply afraid. She kept her head low, unsure where to look or how to act. She remembered her father's warnings, his worried eyes, and the way he had always tried to protect her. Among the many faces around her, one stood out, not because he approached her, but because he did not. A young warrior observed her quietly from a distance. His expression was calm, but his eyes showed thought. He did not look at her with anger or pride. Instead, he looked conflicted, as if something inside him was unsettled. She did not know it yet, but he had noticed her fear. He had seen many things in his life, but something about her presence felt different. Still, he said nothing. He was bound by rules older than himself, rules that guided every step he took. He turned away, trying to ignore the unease growing inside him. As night approached, the weight of her situation settled in fully. She realized her old life was gone, at least for now. The safety of her home, the familiar voice of her father, and a simple rhythm of ranch life felt like memories from another lifetime. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew nothing would ever be the same again. Fear, confusion, and uncertainty surrounded her, but deep inside, a quiet strength remained. She had survived hardship before, and though this was far greater than anything she had faced, she refused to give up hope. Somewhere beyond the darkening horizon, her father still searched for her. Somewhere within this unfamiliar world, choices would be made that would shape both her fate and the fate of others. And so her journey began, not by choice, but by circumstance, marking the end of a quiet life and the beginning of a story that would test courage, belief, and the meaning of humanity itself. When morning came, she woke to unfamiliar sounds. Voices spoke in a language she did not understand. The air smelled different, mixed with smoke, earth, and something bitter she could not name. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then memory returned, all at once, and fear tightened inside her chest. She sat up slowly, careful not to draw attention. Everything around her felt strange. People moved with purpose, following routines she could not understand. No one shouted. No one rushed. It made her nervous in a quiet way. She had imagined fear would come with noise, but instead it came with silence. She tried to steady her breathing. Crying would not help. Panic would only make things worse. Her father had taught her that when animals were frightened, calm movements mattered most. She told herself she must do the same. Someone brought her food. She hesitated at first, unsure if she should accept it. Hunger decided for her. She ate slowly, watching every face around her. Some people avoided looking at her. Others stared openly, not with anger, but curiosity. She felt like a stranger in a place where everyone else belonged. As the day passed, she realized she was being watched, but not harmed. There were rules here, even if she did not know them. She was told where to sit, when to move, and when to stay still. Hands guided her gently but firmly. No one explained anything. The lack of words made everything harder. She missed her father more with every passing hour. She pictured him riding across the plains, calling her name, refusing to give up. That thought gave her strength. She promised herself she would survive long enough to see him again. The young warrior noticed her struggle. He had been taught not to get involved, not to question decisions made by elders. Still, he watched her closely. He saw how she tried to stay calm, how she obeyed without resistance, how fear lived in her eyes even when she stood tall. It reminded him of something he could not easily name. He told himself it was not his concern. She was from another world. Helping her would bring trouble. Tradition was clear. Yet, when he turned away, the image of her standing alone followed him like a shadow. Days passed slowly. She learned small things without words, which paths she could walk, which places she must avoid, which people were safe to be near. She learned to read expressions instead of speech. A lifted hand meant stop. A nod meant move. Silence meant obey. At night, loneliness pressed down on her. She lay awake, listening to distant sounds, thinking about her old life. The ranch felt like a dream now. She wondered if she would forget the sound of her father's voice, the feel of the land beneath her feet. That thought scared her more than anything else. One evening she struggled while carrying water. Her hands were tired, and the container slipped. Water spilled onto the ground. She froze, expecting anger. Instead, the young warrior stepped forward. Without speaking, he helped steady the container. His movements were careful, respectful. Their eyes met for a brief moment. In that moment, something changed. She saw no threat in his face, only seriousness and thought. He saw gratitude in her eyes, mixed with fear. Neither of them spoke, but understanding passed between them like a quiet signal. After that, small moments followed. He did not stay close, but he was nearby. When others were watching, he kept his distance. When no one noticed, he made sure she had what she needed. He showed her where to sit when the wind was harsh. He left extra food where she could find it. She began to feel less alone. Fear still lived inside her, but it was no longer the only thing there. Trust, small and fragile, started to grow. She reminded herself to be careful. Trust could be dangerous. Still, she could not ignore the difference his presence made. She tried to learn more by observing. She noticed how people respected elders, how children were guided patiently, how rules shaped every action. This was not the chaos she had been taught to fear. It was strict, ordered, and deeply rooted in tradition. That realization confused her. She wondered if her father knew this side of the world, or if fear had blinded them both to the truth. She felt torn between loyalty to her past and the reality in front of her. The warrior struggled too. At night he sat alone, thinking about the path before him. He had been raised to believe duty came before feeling, yet every time he saw her, something inside him resisted that belief. He questioned whether rules mattered more than humanity. He watched elders speak about her future. Their words were firm. Decisions were being made. He understood what those decisions meant, and his chest grew heavy. He could follow tradition and remain silent, or he could listen to the voice inside him that would not be ignored. She sensed the change in him before she understood it. His eyes carried weight now, as if he knew something she did not. She felt time pressing in on her, though she did not know why. Fear returned, stronger, sharper, but mixed now with hope. One night, he approached her quietly. He did not touch her, did not speak. He simply pointed toward the horizon, then placed his hand over his heart. The gesture was simple, but its meaning was clear. He was telling her something without words, something important. She nodded slowly. She did not fully understand, but she trusted him enough to listen. That trust frightened her, yet she knew she had no other choice. Survival often meant trusting the unexpected. As darkness settled around them, both of them knew that whatever came next would change everything. The quiet bond they had formed was fragile but real. In a place ruled by rules and silence, two people from different worlds had found understanding. Neither of them knew how far they would have to go. Neither knew the cost of the choices ahead. But one thing was certain. The unknown world she had been taken into was no longer only a place of fear. It had become a place where courage, conflict, and humanity were beginning to collide. And somewhere beyond the plains, a father still searched, unaware that his daughter was learning to survive not just through strength, but through trust in the most unlikely place. Days slowly turned into weeks, and life began to settle into a strange pattern she never imagined she could adapt to. Fear was still present, but it no longer controlled her every breath. She learned when to speak with her eyes, and when silence was safer. She learned how to move without drawing attention, how to observe without staring, and how to protect herself by staying calm. Every morning, she reminded herself that survival came first. Hope came second. She held on to both carefully. She began to notice small details around her. The way people gathered at certain times of day, the respect shown to elders, the quiet discipline that guided even the youngest children. This was not a place ruled by chaos, but by order shaped through generations. Understanding this helped her fear soften, though it never fully disappeared. The young warrior remained close, though always careful. He never spoke to her, but his actions spoke enough. When storms came, he guided her to shelter. When others grew impatient, he stepped in quietly, easing tension without drawing notice. He never acted boldly, never openly defended her. Everything he did was subtle, hidden within routine. She watched him as much as he watched her. She noticed how he carried responsibility on his shoulders, how others looked to him without question, how his face remained calm even when his eyes showed concern. She sensed conflict inside him, though she did not yet understand its depth. One afternoon, she was asked to help with simple work. Her hands were used to labor, and for the first time since she was taken, she felt useful. Working gave her a sense of purpose and reminded her of home. As she focused on the task, she forgot her fear for a moment. The warrior passed by and noticed her effort. Their eyes met briefly, and this time, he nodded. It was small, but it mattered. She felt seen, not as a burden, not as a problem, but as a person. That moment strengthened something between them. Trust grew quietly, like roots beneath the ground. Neither spoke of it. Neither questioned it. They simply allowed it to exist. At night, she continued to think of her father. She wondered how far he had searched, how much pain he carried. The thought of him suffering gave her strength to endure. She promised herself again and again that she would survive, no matter how long it took. The warrior also struggled during the nights. He listened to elders speak of rules and future plans. He had always respected tradition. It shaped his identity and gave his life meaning. But now, those same rules felt heavy. He wondered if honor truly meant silence, or if it meant protecting what was right. He watched her carefully, noticing how she treated others with respect, even when afraid. How she never acted with hate. How she learned without complaint. It challenged everything he had believed about those from her world. One evening, a small incident tested both of them. A misunderstanding caused tension. Voices rose slightly. She felt fear rush back, sharp and cold. She froze, unsure what to do. The warrior stepped forward without thinking. He spoke calmly, firmly, easing the situation before it could grow worse. Afterward, he realized what he had done. He had stepped closer to danger. For himself, people noticed. Questions followed. He brushed them aside, but the risk was real now. There was no turning back. She saw the cost of his actions and felt guilt. She did not want to be the reason for his trouble. That night, she avoided him, keeping her distance. It hurt more than she expected. The next day, he found a way to speak without words. He placed a small object near where she sat, a symbol of peace and protection. It was his way of telling her not to blame herself. She understood and felt relief wash over her. Their bond deepened, shaped by shared silence and mutual respect. They learned to communicate through gestures, glances, and understanding. It was fragile but strong in its own way. As time passed, she began to hear whispers. Not words she understood, but tones that carried meaning. Decisions were being discussed. The mood had shifted. Something was coming. Her chest tightened with fear. The warrior felt it too. Knew the rules. He knew what was expected. And he knew that when the time came, staying silent would mean losing something he could never get back, his sense of honor. He struggled deeply. Helping her would break every rule he had lived by. It could cost him everything. But doing nothing would cost him more. One night, under a quiet sky, he stood at a distance and watched her. She looked tired but strong, afraid but hopeful. In that moment, his decision formed, though he had not yet accepted it fully. She sensed the change again. Something heavy sat between them now, something unspoken but powerful. She did not know what lay ahead, but she trusted that whatever happened, he would not abandon her. Trust had grown where fear once lived. Understanding had replaced ignorance. Two lives, shaped by different worlds, had crossed paths in a way neither could undo. The ground beneath them felt uncertain now. Every step carried risk. But sometimes, the most dangerous path was the one that led to truth. And as the wind moved across the land that night, both of them knew the time for quiet observation was ending. Soon, choices would have to be made, choices that would test courage, loyalty, and the true meaning of doing what is right. The bond they had formed was no longer hidden within silence. It had become a force strong enough to challenge fate itself. The signs were impossible to ignore now. The air around the camp felt heavier, as if everyone sensed that something important was approaching. Movements became more careful. Voices dropped lower. Even the children seemed quieter. She felt it in her chest, a steady pressure that would not go away. She did her best to stay calm, just as she had learned. But inside, fear was growing again. She noticed how often elders gathered, how long their discussions lasted, and how serious their faces looked when they walked away. She did not know the words being spoken, but she understood the meaning behind them. Decisions were being made, and those decisions involved her. At night, sleep came in short pieces. Her dreams were filled with her father's face, the ranch, the open plains, and the moment her old life was taken from her. She woke often, listening to the sounds around her, wondering how much time she had left before everything changed again. The warrior was struggling more than ever. The conflict inside him had reached a breaking point. He had always followed the rules without question. They were not just rules to him. They were the foundation of his identity. They told him who he was, where he belonged, and how he should live. But now, those same rules stood between him and what he felt was right. Every time he looked at her, he saw more than a stranger. He saw fear mixed with strength. He saw patience, respect, and quiet courage. He saw someone who did not deserve the fate being decided for her without a voice. He knew what the rules demanded of him. He also knew the cost of breaking them. He could lose his place among his people. He could lose trust, respect, and everything he had worked to become. The weight of that possibility pressed down on him constantly. Still, the thought of doing nothing felt worse. One evening, an elder spoke directly to him. The words were calm but firm. Expectations were clear. He nodded in response, showing respect, but inside, something cracked. That conversation removed any doubt. Time was almost gone. He spent that night alone, sitting far from others, staring into the dark. The wind moved softly across the land, carrying memories of his childhood, his training, and the lessons he had been taught. He asked himself what honor truly meant. Was it blind obedience, or was it standing up for what was just, even when it was difficult? Before the sun rose, his decision was made. She noticed him watching her more closely that morning. His expression was serious, focused, but not cold. When their eyes met, she felt both fear and comfort at the same time. Something important was about to happen. She could feel it in the way he held himself, in the tension that surrounded him. Later that day, he approached her when no one else was near. His movements were careful, deliberate. He did not rush, he did not speak. Instead, he pointed toward the edge of the camp, then toward the distant land beyond. His eyes held urgency now, mixed with concern. Her heart began to race. She understood enough to know what he was suggesting. The thought terrified her. Escape meant danger. Failure could make everything worse. She hesitated, doubt flooding her mind. He placed his hand over his heart again, then lowered it slowly as if grounding himself. His message was clear. He was willing to risk everything. That realization shook her deeply. She had been taken against her will, yet here was someone willing to give up his own safety for her freedom. The weight of that choice settled heavily on both of them. She nodded once, slowly, carefully. Trusting him now was her only chance. They waited until night fell. Darkness offered cover, but it also carried risk. Every sound felt louder. Every shadow felt alive. Her breath came shallow as she followed him quietly, step by step, staying close but not too close. They moved along paths he knew well, avoiding places where others gathered.
He signaled when to stop, when to move, when to wait. She followed without question.
Fear pushed against her chest, but she kept going. At one point, voices sounded nearby. She froze, panic threatening to take over. He turned, placed a steady hand in front of her, and waited. The voices passed. The danger moved away.
Only then did he continue.
With each step, the risk grew. If they were seen, there would be consequences. For her, it could mean being taken back. For him, it could mean something far worse. He knew this, yet he did not hesitate. As they reached the edge of familiar ground, he stopped. The land ahead stretched wide and dark. One was close, but not guaranteed. He pointed forward, then back at himself, then shook his head slightly. He would not go any farther. She understood. This was as far as he could take her without making escape impossible for both of them. Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to thank him, to tell him what his choice meant. Words failed her. Instead, she placed her hand over her heart, mirroring his earlier gesture. He nodded once. That was enough. She turned and began to move forward, step by step, into the open land. Every part of her wanted to look back, but she forced herself not to. If she hesitated now, everything they risked would be wasted. He watched her until she disappeared into the darkness. Only then did he allow himself to feel the weight of what he had done. He stood still, listening, ready to face whatever came next. Behind him, the camp remained unaware, but that would not last. He knew questions would come. Suspicion would follow. Consequences were unavoidable. Yet, despite the fear tightening in his chest, he felt something he had not expected. Peace. For the first time, his actions matched his beliefs. She walked through the night, guided by the stars and sheer determination. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow felt dangerous, but she kept going, fueled by the hope of seeing her father again and the courage borrowed from the one who had helped her. As dawn approached, exhaustion threatened to stop her. Her legs burned, her throat ached, and fear still followed her like a shadow. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Behind her, a warrior stood alone, waiting to face the cost of breaking every rule he had ever known. Ahead of her, freedom waited, uncertain, difficult, but real. That night had changed both of them forever. One had chosen to risk everything for another's chance at freedom. The other carried that sacrifice forward, knowing she would never forget the courage it took to make that choice. The sky slowly changed color as morning came. She had been walking for hours, guided by the fading stars and her own determination. Every step felt heavy, but she did not stop. Fear was still with her, but it was different now. It no longer controlled her. Hope walked beside it. When the sun finally rose, she found a place to rest. She hid among low hills and tall grass, listening carefully to every sound. She drank a little water, saved food when she could, and forced herself to stay alert. She knew she was not safe yet. Freedom was close, but not complete. As the day passed, memories returned again and again. She thought of her father, his tired hands, his quiet strength, and the way he always looked at her with worry and pride at the same time. She imagined his relief if he ever saw her again. That image gave her strength to keep moving. She also thought about the warrior. She did not know what would happen to him. She did not know if he would be punished, questioned, or forced to leave everything he knew. The thought filled her with sadness and gratitude. Because of him, she had a chance to live her life again. That truth would stay with her forever. She walked carefully through the land she once knew. Lowly, familiar signs appeared. the shape of distant hills, the way the wind moved across the plains. Each small detail told her she was getting closer to home. Her heart beat faster with every step. When she finally saw her father's ranch in the distance, her knees weakened. She stopped, afraid it might disappear if she moved too quickly. Tears filled her eyes. The house stood just as she remembered it, worn but strong. Smoke rose gently from the chimney. She gathered all her courage and walked forward. Her father was outside fixing something near the fence. He looked older. His shoulders were heavier, his movements slower. When he heard footsteps, he turned without much interest. Then he froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he ran. He reached her and held her tightly, as if afraid she might vanish again. He did not speak at first. Words were not enough. Tears fell freely, and neither of them tried to stop them. The silence between them was filled with relief, pain, and love. When he finally spoke, his voice shook. He asked questions, too many at once. She answered slowly, carefully, leaving out details that did not need to be spoken. What mattered was that she was alive. She was home. In the days that followed, healing began. It was not quick or easy. She woke at night from bad dreams. Loud sounds made her tense. Sometimes she stared at the open land and felt fear instead of freedom. Her father noticed and stayed close, patient and understanding. As she helped around the ranch again, finding comfort in familiar work, the rhythm of daily life slowly returned. Each small task helped her feel real again, grounded in the world she had almost lost. But she was not the same person she had been before. She saw the world differently now. Fear no longer lived in simple stories of good and bad. She understood that people were shaped by rules, history, and choices. She had seen humanity where she was told none existed. Sometimes at night, she looked toward the horizon and wondered about the warrior. She hoped he had survived the consequences of his choice. She hoped he had found peace wherever his path had taken him. Back where he remained, life had changed completely. When it was discovered that she was gone, questions spread quickly. Eyes turned toward him. He did not deny what he had done. He stood calm, accepting whatever came next. He had made his choice with clear understanding. The consequences were heavy. Trust was shaken. His place among his people changed. Some turned away. Others watched in silence. He did not argue. He did not explain. He carried the weight quietly, knowing words would not change what had already happened. Eventually, he left. Not forced, but guided away by unspoken agreement. He took only what he needed and walked into the wide land alone. It was not the future he had imagined, but it was one he accepted. As he traveled, he thought about her. He hoped she was safe. He hoped she had reached her home. He did not regret his choice. Even when loneliness pressed in, he reminded himself why he had acted. Honor, he realized, was not about rules alone. It was about protecting life, dignity, and truth, even when the cost was high. Years passed. She grew older, stronger, and wiser. The pain of the past softened, though it never fully disappeared. She carried the memory with respect, not fear. It had shaped her, taught her, and shown her the power of compassion. She never spoke publicly about what had happened. Some stories were not meant for crowds. But in quiet moments, she remembered everything clearly. The fear, the silence, the trust, and the courage of one person who chose humanity over tradition. His fear of the world softened. He listened more. He judged less. He had almost lost his daughter, and that loss had taught him that the world was more complex than he once believed. Sometimes travelers passed through with stories. Stories of a warrior who lived alone, who helped strangers, who followed his own path. She never knew if those stories were true. She never tried to find him. Some connections were not meant to be completed, some were meant to be remembered. As she stood one evening watching the sun set over the plains, she felt a quiet peace. Her life had been broken and rebuilt. Fear had taken something from her, but courage had given something back. One act of kindness had crossed borders of fear, rules, and history. One choice had changed two lives forever, and though the land remained wide and divided, the truth remained simple. Even in the hardest times, compassion can rise, and one brave decision can echo across a lifetime.